Hey everybody, Michael from One Sky, back with another new moon video. The new moon on June 3rd is going to take place in the constellation of Taurus, so if you were thinking that it was going to be somewhere else, I'm placing it at the 20th degree of constellation Taurus because I use the astronomical heavens, the actual skies, in this kind of sidereal astrology. Let's take a look at this chart. Right away, you might see a couple things that are different to you. This is uneven sign astrology. So here, the constellation of Aries is a little bit smaller than the constellation of Taurus, and so on. Again, this is astronomically accurate astrology, so we're taking into account 13 constellations. So this new moon is here in the constellation of Taurus, just off the star of Aldebaran, but still within its orb. So it could be a very powerful moon, and it could be a very powerful time to develop ourselves. Venus is ruling Taurus and has just entered the constellation of Taurus, kind of still in between Aries and Taurus, but technically by this midpoint system, still in the constellation boundaries of the constellation of Taurus. So right away there's going to be, just like there was in the last full moon, a really Venusian theme. And Venus in Taurus is the archetype of the Empress, the third tarot card, one of abundance, one of resplendence, one of luxury, harvest, excellent for grounding, sensual, earthy pleasures kind of influence. You see also the planet Mercury in the constellation of Taurus too. So heavy Taurus theme, a lot of Taurian energy to this chart. And Venus was just conjunct for the last full moon to Uranus, and that was back in constellation Aries before she moved into Taurus. So there may have been a spark just recently in the last 2 weeks of relationship energies of new appreciations, energies of maybe new values, maybe new relationship values. Maybe we're redefining ourselves in Aries and how we relate to others and the world. And this Venus in Taurus is making a very close trine up to Pluto specifically, but you see still in effect the theme of the day, really the theme of the year, is this Pluto-Saturn South Node conjunction in constellation Sagittarius. So as we integrate these values, these new values, what's emphasized at this time, at this new moon, and for this lunar cycle, is going to be our relationship to Pluto and Saturn in Sagittarius. And I want to take a moment just reflect on Pluto conjunctions, because Pluto tends to really deepen, really empower, really intensify, and in a very transformative way, any energy that it touches. So for example, we have the last Pluto-Uranus conjunction coinciding with worldwide cultural revolution, forward-thinking, progressive values of the 1960s. And we have a Pluto-Neptune conjunction. The last one of those was in the 1890s. And at that time, we were really changing eras. It was a changing of the guard, but especially Neptunian themes that stand out to me are like an occult movement, an occult revolution that was and very well expressed in the Theosophical Society. You had Madame Blavatsky and her cohort. You had the development of psychology with Freud and Jung. Women were voting for the first time. There was a lot of really marked change. Women were able to vote in New Zealand, the first country to give women the vote, just 2 years after that Pluto-Neptune conjunction. You had the development of the car and the airplane. And that conjunction did take place with the moon trine to Uranus. So you do see a heavy Aquarian-Uranian theme in the expression of these energies, but cars, airplanes, and the U.S. was in economic depression, which is very Neptunian in its own way. Saturn is representing in the psyche and in the collective experience authority, orthodoxy, structure, and conjunct up to Pluto. I expect we're going to see some deep transformative intensity around those themes. Saturn and Pluto are like the dark lords, and together, when you get them in their energies working together, you have rule by secrecy, you have obsessive control, authoritarianism. With the South Node here, conjunct this Pluto-Saturn relationship, you have right now at this time a lot of the old values of our worldview in Sagittarius, this kind of bigger picture energy around our very philosophy and our worldview. As it relates to authoritarianism, orthodoxy, and control, you have all of that coming up for review. We have a societal reevaluation of our relationship to it. And again, that's Venus, our relationships, fresh out of Aries, conjunct Uranus for that last full moon. So we're integrating, at this time, we're integrating any changes that might have come out of that relationship, especially around our relationship values. So what's our relationship to our philosophy? What's our relationship to our authority? What's our relationship to authority in the world and the structure of it, the orthodox structure of it? Sagittarius, we also find religion there in Sag, so we may be heavily evaluating the doctrines that we adhere to, or that others adhere to at this time. That Venus is actually making a zero degree trine up to Pluto here at 16 minutes of arc. So it's very close. There's going to be a very close interweaving and intermingling between the energies of Venus, which are ruling Taurus, where this new moon is, and the energies of this conjunction, this very important conjunction here with Pluto and Saturn. We do see, when you get Venus trine up to Pluto, a quality of obsession, fixation. It could be romantic, it could just be one of like deep appreciation, but it's usually an intense experience. And so that's Venus, the ruler of Taurus. And now looking at the sun and moon themselves, we can see it's not a very strong opposition, and we're looking at the full aspects in this chart. I'd been looking in previous charts at just the very close aspects, but I decided to take a look at all the aspects. So it's a little more jumbled than usual, but I'm going to pick out some of the really standout stuff, like this opposition to Jupiter, and Jupiter's retrograde in Ophiuchus. Sun-Moon opposition to Jupiter can often express itself as being too much, too big, too expanded, too wide a range. Maybe we might dream bigger than our means. We might be inspired by plans or designs that we can't actually implement at this time. And that's definitely compounded by the difficult relationships that Jupiter's making, including this square up to Neptune. And that Neptune's actually T-squaring the new moon. So we have this Jupiter, Neptune, new moon, T-square. So when you get Jupiter and Neptune together, you really get a dreamy, lost in the clouds kind of effect. You really have a hard time with that square, staying with your feet on the ground in a grounded, pragmatic way. So it's going to present a little bit of a challenge to this Taurus moon. It's going to ask us to set the intention to stay grounded, to lean into what we know is real and what we know is practical, and the things that we can depend on based on our five senses and what we know about the world. And with Jupiter making an opposition to the new moon, as well as sesquisquare to Uranus and a quincunx to Venus, opposition to Mercury, we have a Jupiter that's making some really difficult aspects. In fact, its only harmonious aspects are aspects up to that Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which it's making nice semi-sextile to both of those bodies. So in a way, there may be real problems, challenges to accessing optimism about the future. There may be problems, obstacles integrating our new values, our new, maybe any ideas or changes in relationship to the world at large and its structure of authority and control. There may be either dreaming too big, too beautiful, maybe a naive, a deludedly optimistic view, or it could be not being able to access appreciation and optimism. Sometimes with this aspect here, the quincunx, you have the left hand, Jupiter, and the right hand, Venus, then they don't know what each other's really doing. So these new values that are coming in, this rulership of Taurus and everything that it represents as far as the grounded, earthy, abundant sense of things, it might be a little disconnected from this difficultly aspected Jupiter and its semi-sextile up to the dark lords up in Sagittarius. We also have Mars here making a opposition from Gemini to the stellium in Sagittarius, and that might express itself as angry or aggressive energy around some of these issues. It might express itself as direct thinking, consideration, but there may be an edgy quality with that opposition. There may be some heavier feelings that are really easy to process during this time, but also arising. They'll be asked to be dealt with. So one interesting thing about this chart is that all of the personal planets, all 5 planets that really talk about our inner experience of ourself, Mars, Mercury, Moon, the Sun, and Venus, are here in Taurus and Gemini. And the dispositor of Mars here in Gemini is placed in Taurus, giving it an extra connection to that grounded, earthy, soft, sensuous Taurus energy. But everywhere else, and I'll make the exception here with Uranus, because Uranus is kind of with us, but everywhere else you have the transpersonal influences. So on the other side of the chart, you have Neptune, Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter. and 3 out of those 4 are retrograde. So the world may seem to be moving just on its own at this time, and we may be in a really different place. We may feel a little bit of a schism, a dichotomy between our personal values, what we ground ourselves in, and the momentum of the world. We may, at this time, find that relationship especially challenged by wonky Neptune up here, T-squaring this Sun-Jupiter opposition. But wonky Neptune is still in the constellation in the stars of Aquarius, which I do feel is a great container for it because it tends to bring out its higher aspects and its more positive, generous, spiritual, forward-thinking, kind of applying the dream to make the world a better place kind of energy. Nonetheless, Neptune is a pretty insidious malefic, and it too is making harmonious relations up to this Pluto-Saturn South Node conjunction, the Dark Lords partying in Sagittarius. So, in short, there could be some division. There could be some division between our experience of ourselves and our experience of the world. And there can be some problems integrating any new ideas or new energies, but integrating those ideas and energies is nonetheless the theme of this new moon, especially with Venus, the ruler of Taurus, where this all happens, so closely trined up to Pluto. I want to take just a second and say that this is asking for us to stay grounded in appreciation. I think that's the energy that's going to carry us through this lunar cycle. And I think if there's anything that really needs to be cultivated, it's a grounded faith in the divine plan, that all of this is the expression of a cosmic wisdom that transcends our mundane or basic ideas about it. And to cultivate a real relationship with ourselves that's collected, that's grounded, to work towards integrating any new values, especially relationship values, especially our relationship to society, especially our relationship to religious, political, societal forms of orthodoxy, especially where they relate to control. And with these powerful squares up to Neptune, again, one from the Sun and Moon, making that new moon conjunction, and the other from Jupiter here, highly activated Jupiter in this chart. It's asking for us to really be sure that our ideas and that our hopes, that our sense of inspiration and optimism is grounded and is realistic. For those of you who don't know, I'd like to take a second and look at Jupiter in Ophiuchus. This is that full moon in Taurus, and if we head around, we can see the constellations that define the zodiac: Aquarius, Capricorn, Sagittarius. And here you do see that the planet Jupiter is in the stars of the constellation of Ophiuchus. It's actually in the degree of Ras al-Hag, which is the head of the figure, the head of Asclepius. In Arabic, it meant the head of the snake charmer. And there's a serpentine and a mystical quality to Ophiuchus that has to do with the visionary, the transformative, the healing, the divine in that way. And again, just to look here, that is opposite to the sun and moon, which are in the area of Taurus, in the vicinity of Aldebaran, lending them power. And you also see Mercury lent some groundedness, some real world pragmatism by the constellation of Orion here. But just to clear up why I mention Ophiuchus, it's because it is definitely a constellation which crosses the ecliptic. And for more information on that, you can check out videos on Ophiuchus. So alright everybody, I think that's all I have to say for this video. As always, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.